Hello, all, and welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions. We are here for the last exit interview for Survivor Monte Carlo. Morgan, Lilly, and I are joined tonight by our winner, Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited about the results, obviously. And before we even get into anything, I just want to say thank you again to the three of you and everyone else involved because I know it's been mentioned a few times, but it is such a great production and everything. So, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. So it's much appreciated by all of us.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for saying that.
yeah, thank you. Coming, I mean, it means a lot coming from everybody, but I mean, we know you've played a bunch of games throughout your org career, so it's nice to hear that from someone who's played a lot. So,
Yeah.
more than just
It makes a difference, and this one definitely like stands out above the rest. So yeah, you should all be very proud of that.
well, to connect the dots, you should be very proud of the game you played. I know I mentioned in the cast assessment that you were like, for me, a dark horse winner. You weren't my winner pick, but you were. If I had to pick a second person, you would have been my choice. And I thought I saw a lot in your cast assessment, or I thought I saw a lot in your intro video and in your application, but I mean, just from when the game started till when you won, you just blew me away with everything you did, everything that kind of how you carry yourself in conversations. I just, hats off. Just so good. I don't really.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's great to hear, and it's very nice because for most of us, we play these things and we just don't know. You never know, and it's always the people that you never know who you're going to have with you, and everything like that. So it was nice to have a bunch of people that I think really respected the game and respected production and wanted to play and really put their all into it. And so that's perfect for me because I'm happy to be here and play too. So I'm like, let's do this. And no one knew me, so I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, given your org experience, did you approach this game differently from others, or were there more similarities? Because you have a couple wins in your pocket, correct? So was there anything that you did differently for this game to also help you get that win?
I was in a weird place in my life when I kind of applied for this. I was feeling a lack of motivation and it was also January, I think. So it was just like that slump. And yeah, I just needed to really be able to focus my attention towards something that I could potentially do well in. And with this, I was telling myself, you know what? Let's just do whatever. Let's be a little crazy if I need to. And I don't think I was, but I I was definitely willing to play a little bit harder than I probably normally do, just because I wanted to challenge myself. And I'm not a social person. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And so it is a big challenge for me to fit in with others. And I'm also the oldest person here. I'm almost 39 years old. So yeah, it's a good challenge.
Yeah, it's shocking, I guess, to hear you say those things because as a viewer, you come across as like friendly. Everybody loves you. Like, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but Kylie and Mike, you don't vote with them and they still go to you, because you're the most trustworthy that they have in the game and someone they connect with. So I think it's your pulse on the game throughout the entire season is I don't know. It was just amazing. I don't have a word for it other than amazing. I don't think a lot of people can do that. So I think that's a huge hats off to you and your
Thank
ability.
Yeah, it took me a couple rounds to kind of really, dig my feet in. And I was as surprised as, I don't know, maybe you were as well when the first exit interviews or the first few with like Julia and Micah, saying that I was one of their favorites or, most impressed or closest. I was like, I don't even know where that came from. But very unexpected. because I don't think I talked to like one time to Julia, and I didn't speak to Micah on a one-on-one at all. So, it was, but once that Micah vote out round came about, that's when what I had been planning really kind of started just coming back to me. And I was like, okay, we can do something with this.
Do you think that the one world aspect helped you kind of get a little bit to know everybody before the tribes were formed? It was less stressful?
Yeah. So no, it's super stressful. And that's the thing. So Morgan did not ask me a question as one of the like 10 or 11 people that were asked a question that first night. And I was like, oh God, that was my one chance to speak, because I am so antisocial. It's not even funny. And I didn't speak to anyone. Everyone went around and introduced themselves like afterwards. I skip me. I didn't say a word to anybody that first night. And I logged off and I was like, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way to make up for that. But I'm much better one-on-one or in a small group. The anxiety, I can't even describe to you. It's just that social anxiety. It's just, wow. I was like, okay, no, we're getting off this. And so, so that weekend I was like, I need to start reaching out to people, and connecting with them any way I can, just even via text, and see what happens.
Yeah. I think a big part of your game pre-merge, which, I don't want to talk too much about it, but is the tribe swap, because you're the only one to get swapped to the other tribe. You're not with anybody that you were originally with. And I feel like there were two ways you could have taken it. The like, woe is me, this is going to be horrible, or the way that you took it, where you were like, this can, I can make this what I want. So how do you think that tribe swap affected your game long term?
So when I saw that, and I knew it, I felt it, and I saw those cards being revealed, and I was like, I'm going to be one of these captains. And I knew in that moment that I had to do something where I was like, yeah, these could, the fallout of this could be the exact same teams that we just kind of left if we all picked the same people. I wasn't going to do that, but also I need a way to stand out and connect with the other members of the tribe, the other tribe, Rukan. So I'm like, this is my perfect opportunity to do this. I think that my social game had been working up to that point as much as I needed it to be, and people were responding well to it. So I was in that zone. I'm like, let's just do it. I'm going to pick Kylie because, like I've said before, Kylie, a mile away, you can see that Kylie was like so social, connected to everyone, I'm sure. And I knew that if I threw myself at Kylie, she would want to, she's a mom. She might want to protect me and just be like, this is my person who I can use. I can use Jonathan. And so I thought that was a great opportunity to do something of it. And I do think that was a big element into changing my game and making it what it was going forward. Yeah, without that, it could have been completely different. It would have been.
Yeah. As a viewer, I feel, not having played the game, I feel like one of the most impressive things for me to see was just what you mentioned, your ability to pinpoint who is the most important person for me to get close to. And it's like you knew it every time, right? You knew Kylie. I feel like you also connected with Victoria, which ended up being pivotal in your game. Why do you think you're so good at that? Is that personal experience or?
So that's where Kyle and Mike's speculation of me being able to read people is actually real, and it comes into it. I do this for profession. I am a casting director. I work with actors all day long. I'm in auditions all day long. So, for the last 13 years, I've had people lying to my face. And so and not only do I have to watch it, I have to redirect them and assess it and figure out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and, all of that. So I do think my profession really comes into play with this. And that's probably the one note with all of the orgs that I've played is that I get from people watching the game or, even viewers, just in the viewers lounge kind of a thing, is that my perception is probably what I'm best at. So let's take the one thing that I'm good at, and I'm going to try to work on everything else that I'm not good at, but take that one thing and use it any which way I can. So Yeah, I just think it's essentially my job has trained me to be perceptive. And when you're antisocial, you just kind of sit in the corner and watch people. And so I think it's just in my nature as well.
I think one of the smartest relationships that you cultivated that I don't think got a lot of light was yours with Connor. Because it was shocking to me as a viewer at Final Four, like you were off the board for him. Your relationship with him had like convinced him that you were a ride or die, right? You were going to the end. And so I think had you not been able to connect with him and make that, he could have been swayed. So I think that, that was like your final hurdle. And it was like, it had been done 8 rounds ago. So I guess, tell me a little bit more about your relationship with Connor, because we didn't get to see a lot of it in the episodes.
Sure. So, I mean, that is my, element, seeing someone who, and it happened with Michael as well, seeing someone who is being undervalued and either underestimating them, by like other people are underestimating them. And I'm like, let me swoop in and just, build that connection, build an army of underdogs. And so with Connor, I could tell that he bought a couple things actually. So I always thought there was some conversation or connection that he would have had with Victoria, even if it was unspoken, just knowing that they're coming back in this game together. Beyond that, I knew from our conversations, albeit brief conversations that we had, because as he does with everyone, that he was buying my, Mike's this monster. And so that's why he wanted Mike. You see Connor throughout wanting Mike. I got into his ear at the beginning of Merge and he just went with it. So I was like, great. And to be fair and to be honest, I didn't even know my relationship with Connor was as strong as it was. That was a bit of a surprise to me. But yeah, I mean, if you respect people and value them, I think that they can see and appreciate that. And I mean, you'd have to ask him. But I think for me, that's kind of what I was trying to do. I wasn't using him. I was just, letting him know that even though he's 17, it doesn't matter. He's the same. Everyone has their own place. Like everyone has space in this game. And I value that no matter who you are, where you come from, any of that. So.
Yeah, I think that's nice. I think, sometimes people lose that in this game. And I think that does go a long way. So it was nice to see, that you were making connections and bringing people together like Connor and Michael that end up working out for you in the end, because those are who sit next to you at Final Tribal. Speaking of, I want to go back a little bit, I guess, to the merge. And there is this plan to flip on Andrew. Kind of plan to get Andrew out. You are a little bit in the middle, right? Because you've kind of connected with everybody. So was Andrew the ideal person to go here, or was there somebody else that you had an idea about and then Andrew kind of worked out?
Andrew was an option. It needed to be a bigger person who was really kind of running that side of things. So I was trying to get a feel for it while building connections with people as well. As some of you may know already, like I went on a podcast with Andrew and I invited him to, I like made up a new, the podcast is pre-existing, but the kind of what show we're covering was brand new. And that was part of the game for me. That was I enjoy Andrew, but that was also to kind of connect with him on a deeper level that others may not be able to. And, this Drag Race UK versus the world, but and he did a great job at it, so I think he should do a lot more of that. But I was investing in anyone whichever way I could, and although I that week invested in Andrew, I was still like, okay, perfect. People want to get Andrew out. He's one of like maybe 2 or 3 options for me right now that I want to start with, and I knew that Ruken had to go over and over and over again. before we even touched Mike on Serpone. So that was always needed to be done. And that's kind of also when I was formulating my hit list of when everyone needed to go. So
speaking of the hit list, I remember at final, it might have actually been final 10, but it might have been final 9. I did a confessional with Jonathan, and we had it, we just didn't air it, of him showing us a piece of paper with everyone's name on it in order of how they went home, and it was exactly what you saw. And again, it was purposefully not aired because if you show that and that person makes it to the end, it's pretty what the outcome is going to be. But yeah, another just additive to like the impressive hold that you had on the game and impressive pulse, like Lilly said earlier, of what you had on the game. I do want to ask a question, and I apologize, Lilly, if I'm jumping ahead, but I do want to know who you felt like was your biggest adversary in the game. Not necessarily like just in relation to how you play, who do you felt like played a similar game and then you maybe had to get rid of them? I feel like I have a couple people in mind, so I kind of want to hear who you feel like was that person for you.
Well, I mean, so as far as playing like a similar game to me, I knew that, I mean, obviously Victoria, you know, we were playing this together, and I think she and I we have a great friendship outside of this game, but it's like, I think that's why it's like, we're very similar and we're good at reading people. And, you know, whenever I would speak to Victoria, it was always like she would always come up with scenarios, and I think of like almost everything, but she would always come up with that scenario that I never thought of. And I was like, yes, okay, perfect. Okay. So, you know, we played so similar that I do think, although I took probably more risks and she played a little more outwardly with winning certain things and whatnot, I do think that she was, you know, an adversary for me. But also like Mike, he's someone who typically in a game I would gun for right away because they often make it to the end and win. And just because, you know, everyone's like, why did you let that person get to the end? And there's so, you know, so even though he's playing big, and I think those types of people in real Survivor not necessarily, you know, win the game, but in orgs, I feel like they do. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. You tell me, who did you think that was kind of my biggest foe, I guess?
I felt like watching it back, I felt like Kylie and Kyle were two people that I felt like they play at like a similar threat level to you. They try and play sort of a similar game to you. Kylie may be more social on the social side, and Kyle may be more on the strategy side. But yeah, I mean, not saying those people played the same game as you, or they just played the most similar. Like I don't know how to exactly phrase it, but that's just kind of
Kyle was the funny thing with, and you're right, because with Kyle, I think I jumped on one call with him and I was like, he is not having any of it from me. And so I was like, okay. And I was really trying to, he's probably the one person that I felt that I reached out to and connected and was just, see you later. Like, you know, he was just not having my baloney. But I was I remember trying to tell him, like, you know, we're in similar situations and we're kind of in the middle of Serpone, and, you know, how you feel. And I just wasn't getting anything back. So, yeah. And then with Kylie, you're right. Like Kylie's just so social, and I'm so jealous of that game because I wish I could be that person. And she's so dangerous. And I'm glad that the people that I was working with could see that. Even still, she did amazing. Like she came in 6th. And I don't think she'll ever not do super well because she's that good with, you know, just connecting with everyone and being super likable. And yeah, I mean, love Kylie. Even though she didn't vote for me. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine, Kylie.
Oh, I had a question that it literally escaped my mind. Well, I have a bunch, but there was one that was, it was back to your voting, as Ian said, you kind of like planned out who you wanted to vote for. And I was wondering, was it more so trying to get to the end? Were you focusing on who you wanted at the end? You know, like at merge, were you thinking of who you wanted to sit next to or who should be next to go?
So making that list, it was really seeing my path to the end and being able to map it out. It's literally like looking at a map and being like, where do I need to go and what highways do I need to get there? And it was, you know, you might have seen in that diagram, and like I've mentioned before, I thought Margaret was a really big threat, and I literally had her in the middle, and then just all her connections and how I needed to get rid of those people. So working with some of those people, and then it just kind of fell from there. Like after that was done, you know, get Parker out, get Margaret out, get, you know, Will, who, because they were kind of against each other. So see you later, Will, once he was used to get her out and things like that. And then get rid of the mic of it all. And then the chaos. You can't bring chaos too close to the end because you don't know what's going to happen. And then Kylie, because of her relation. And also it worked out in the sense of, I feel like when people were like catching on to me, they were also the next to go. And that was a coincidence, perhaps. You know, so thank God it went the order that I wanted to go, because I feel like people were right on the cusp of like really targeting me if they stayed in an extra round or two.
Were you surprised when Kylie came to you and kind of, you know, let the cat out of the bag that her and Mike knew each other before? And did that affect this, even though, you know, you didn't know this and she still went out where you wanted her to, but did it make it just that much easier to get her out that round or next round?
You would think, just because you're like, oh, you're keeping all of this from me. But at the end of the day, I try not to play emotionally and just, you know, you have to kind of leave that. You experience emotions, obviously, but you need to kind of leave it aside, and your game decisions are your game decisions. So, and I know there's a lot of talk about, you know, Kylie and Mike are like saying that I didn't convince them and they weren't, you know, convinced that I was with them. And I wanted to clarify that I never really felt that way. It was just more like I knew that I had convinced them that I was their only option, not that I was like fully with them. It was just that and that was what I knew that they felt, even though I do think that there was ways around that. So I'm like, I think they absolutely could have, you know, maybe not when Kylie left, I think it was too far gone, but you know, beforehand, I think they could have done things that would have potentially changed some of that, or, you know, attempted to anyway in a different manner. Mm-hmm. So I never thought that they were like fully with me.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about at the swap, though, how you knew that Kylie was an important person to have a relationship with, because throughout the game, she pretty much refused to target you because of the strong connection that you guys had built over the course of the game, which started at the final 13. And, you know, I don't think trying to get people to vote you out was ever a plan for her. Even in her most desperate hour at the final 7, final 6, I just don't think she would have really considered that. So kudos to you, I think, with that.
Yeah. And, you know, with that type of game, I know I'm always risking people being upset and people being hurt. And, but at the end of the day, if I'm going to make it to the end and I'm going to win a game, I want people, and if people aren't going to vote for me and it's because of a personal matter, then I get it. But I you know, I understand that. So and if people are voting for me, I do want it to be on a strategic level, not because they're friends with me. So I understand.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, because you mentioned you wanted to be Kylie's last, you know, chance in the game. And that, do you think that prevented her from ever kind of turning on you? Like if Mike and Kylie, after Will goes out, they think they're closer to maybe Michael or Connor, do you think then they try to pitch your name? Or do you think even if it wasn't as close as it had been, it still would have been hard for them to kind of throw your name out there.
Yeah, I think it would have been hard to throw my name out there. I mean, the thing is with Michael as well is that I went into that night, the Parker night of breakout rooms, knowing that I was going to swoop him up, and it was kind of like, I'm like, Victoria, get in a room with me and Michael, and that's what I did, because I'm like, was left out of the vote and no one's kind of scooping him up, so I'm like, he's going to be looking for people, so come on aboard. And so I think that and then the fact that his name was used every time, which is something I was trying to always facilitate. I think you heard Kylie at some point say that when it was, Mike voted, well, Kyle's round when he left, Mike voted for Michael, and that was because of Kylie suggesting that. So I knew that there was a lot to use there, and making sure that the people that was leaving in the game would never play together. And so that was key for me. And poor Kylie. Kylie had like, Mike, which is great. It's always great having a friend in the game, but at the same time, it's always super hard having a friend in the game, because you do things that, like she even said, are at the detriment to your own gameplay. And then she also had me, who kind of like targeted her as like, as I did. So she had two things against her, I think. So, and she did well. But
yeah, and I think that kind of like your relationship and how it went with Kylie also kind of prevented her in a way from not voting for you at the end, where, like, again, who cares, because you got the majority. I think, like, while I was watching you play, I kind of felt you take jury management to, like, kind of the way that I've look at jury management is, like, a lot of people are worried about, as each person goes, do I have their vote? But it's only important to get the majority of votes. So in that moment, were you kind of not necessarily thinking about her as a jury vote, or were you kind of, as most players do, and as a lot of the Monte Carlo cast has, just kind of looking as, like, as each person goes, like, was that your jury management, like just hoping that in the end you could earn each person's vote?
I definitely thought about, my relationship with everyone kind of as it went along, and how that would play out with who I wanted in the end, and even some contingencies in that respect, and knowing who are the more likely people to kind of hold it against me. Michael has mentioned how bitter he is, and I knew that if I went back on my final three with him and it was at my hand, he would never vote for me. But you have to just assess, like, do I have overall the majority of votes? And I always thought that I had, even if I was pissing off some people along the way. And I always knew that I could turn a couple Ruken against them and kind of vote with the Sapone. So and it just kind of worked out. But I mean, I was always reassessing, always thinking about it, always, and never reaching out to someone just before they go and making an inauthentic kind of like a obvious jury kind of, treatment or whatever you want to call it. But I never did any of that. I'm like, I tried to be authentically myself as much as possible, and, just hope people want to reward that at the end,
If there happened to be a battle back of everyone that was voted out in the entire game at Final Five, and they don't go home right after, like most battle backs, who would have been your ideal to come back in?
Out of anyone, even like pre-merge or
even pre-merge?
Gosh,
so you're going from 5 back to 6.
Mm-hmm. And let's say they get individual immunity with the battle back.
Ooh.
Morgan, we're never doing this.
Getting it. No,
it's hard because, a part of me wants to say, just let Kylie come back. because I know how big of a threat, and even with immunity, then we'd get rid of McKenna as we did, and then get Kylie the next round. But if you're talking about someone who I think would help me, I guess unbeknownst to me at the time, I would have been lucky to get a Micah back or Julia. Let's get Julia back. You know what? Forget it. Let's just get Julia back at Final Six, and yeah, we'll do that. She can have immunity as well.
Yeah, that's funny. I know battlebacks are hard because they normally go right out, but it's interesting to think if somebody came, if they would have helped your game more so, even if you planned your final five how you had it.
I would have been thrown, and I would have gosh, I'm glad it didn't happen. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I want to ask you this, because I talked about it. We talked about Victoria. If Kylie had won the final six immunity, would the order still have gone pretty much the same? Like just basically switching McKenna and Kylie? Yeah,
it was talked about, and it was, and we kind of, and because of, we knew how strong Kylie was as well, and she already had won an individual immunity with, I guess, Margaret. You know, we definitely said, if that happens, we just flip them. So that was the plan.
Why, in your order, was it McKenna and then Victoria, not the other way around?
Oh, McKenna was connected to people. And, you know, she even said she tried to work with Margaret, and she was well liked. And McKenna, you know, Victoria and McKenna are just so similar to, I feel like, my friends in outside of this game, that I just wanted to play with them. Honestly, in a normal game for me, I would just, let's all go to the final three together. I would love that. But, you know, I needed that win, like I was saying before this, because of kind of the place that I was in mentally and whatnot. And I really wanted this. This is something that I was proving to myself. But so I needed to make sure that McKenna went out sooner rather than later, but you know, wanted to be loyal as much as I could be, because she was so much of a threat, and she made moves, and she went against Mike. And I'm like, you know, when we were doing those questions, like, Mike was voting for me every time, but in the reunion, but I think Mike would have voted for McKenna if she was anywhere near there. So, you know, I would have lost Margaret's vote. I would have lost Mike's vote. I would have, you know, there's no way I could have won. And so, and Victoria saw that, and, you know, me and Victoria were number ones, not like actual number ones. Me and McKenna weren't number ones until the Micah vote. And so, yeah, I just tried to play again as loyal as I possibly could. So, and if you get me first, even though you'll probably think that you got me first, but if you actually got me first, then I will be loyal to you as long as I can. And in a normal game, I will, you know, probably take you to the end, even if it's going to cost me. So
I know we danced around Final Tribal, but your Final Tribal was very strong. You had a strong opening. I feel like you responded to questions well. Was there anything that kind of surprised you, whether it be the other Final Tribal members or the jury throughout that Final Tribal surprised you? Any, you know, like, thing you felt like you could have done better, or you did really great?
Oh, I mean, the whole game I could have done so much better. I feel like in Final Tribal, I didn't do that great. You know, I was tired. I've mentioned this once or twice, but, you know, I have chronic illness. Several of the live game nights were, thank God I was just sitting on my couch, because I could barely peel myself off the floor. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's not something that I want to use as a crutch, but it's very difficult for me sometimes to do anything. Especially with stress, it aggravates a lot of that. And so I tried my best. I tried to be as prepared as possible. we didn't have a lot of time, and I wanted to, show everyone what my game was. So I would have liked to have just sat there and authentically spoke and just kind of, be more real with people. But I had to kind of rush through it and just, paint the picture that I needed to paint. And so, although I stand by it and I believe everything that I said, am I surprised by anything? No, I thought they were going to go harder on me with the questioning. It was kind of light. And yeah, I mean, I was surprised by some of the voting, but not as far as final tribal. Yeah.
Whose vote were you surprised by?
I was surprised by, to be honest, Parker's, because not that I necessarily thought that I was getting Parker's, but just kind of his explanation in his little, like when we see that, in the finale that we, how he's voting, it almost felt like he thought that he was like being forced to vote for me. And so he was rebelling against it, is what it kind of came off to me. He's like, no, I'm going to vote how I want to vote, not how I'm like kind of being told to vote, is what it seemed like. Again, I don't know, but yeah, so I was a little surprised with the reasoning behind it, not by what the vote was. And I was genuinely anticipating 5 or 6 altogether. So with knowing that I wasn't getting Kylie's, and Will's was up in the air, Margaret's was up in the air, although I felt good about kind of how she was responding in the final tribal council. And Parker's was very up in the air for me. Yeah.
I think a thing a lot of people, like when I played, I never considered jury management at all, let alone who is in the jury the longest, because, I think if you have a cheerleader in the jury, it really helps. I don't know that anybody on this cast had a cheerleader, which I think made final tribal more fair. What do you think about maybe their discussions on Ponderosa? Do you think they talked about who they thought would win, or do you think that played into final tribal as well, like you mentioned with Parker?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think if you're, it really depends. Like Andrew was obviously someone who was, a big fan of voting for me, I guess, because he seemed like it in the final tribal and just everything about that, and when he voted, and I'm sure he was saying great things about me. But you have to think about it this way: if someone's like not enjoying Andrew and Ponderosa and he's pushing me, then they might not want to do me because of it. So you have to have the right people in there who like you, not just having people that like you, because it could be the wrong people that like you. And so I knew that, or I was hoping that, Mike would be able to, appreciate the game and really see that and could, speak on that, as well as Victoria and McKenna, so I had some faith, but honestly, I wasn't convinced I was winning by any means. And no one owes me their vote. So, I'm very grateful for all the ones that I got.
I think kind of watching some of the Ponderosa chat, it really wasn't until McKenna got to the jury that she was able to really reveal a lot of what you guys have been doing, and, the position that you especially were in, because the first 5 people on the jury were all original Rue Ken people who you did not necessarily work very closely with. So that's just what I saw, at least during the game.
And to add to that, I think in what you said is true about Jonathan, about how, the wrong cheerleader can be on the jury. I think what you benefited from was like, no one had seen your game. Like I remember seeing a lot of comments like, man, I'll vote for Jonathan if he gets to the end, but I have no idea how he's going to get there. Or like, I remember a couple jurors saying like, I don't know what Jonathan's doing, but like, I'll be shocked and surprised and happy to vote for him in the end if he's there. But again, I don't know how he gets there. I think I remember Margaret saying that. I remember Andrew saying that. Again, you get both of their votes. but yeah, I think, and you talked about that. I don't know if it was in confessional to us or just talking after confessionals or before confessionals, but you said like, this is the game that I'm good. I'm cool with playing. I'm cool with not having people knowing nothing until the very end. I like being able to reveal to them kind of what I've been doing the whole time. Where some people, I mean, probably most players aren't comfortable with that. They like having their game known before they get to the end, so they don't have to do a ton of explaining. But yeah, again, I think what you said is true, and I think you, like I told Michael in his exit, like you earned every vote that you got, and you earned some before final tribal. It was clear, and then some during as well. So
yeah. Yeah, it's that type of gameplay is always kind of what I fall into. I think for the most part, I've played very, right out the gate. Like I'm a big target. I played in an all-stars, but it's like Big Brother, which is a totally different game. As well as minis are completely different. And for me, you need a flashier game in minis because you don't build those connections. People don't have time to think and sit and talk about all that kind of stuff. So, and I get that. And for me, with a long game in a survivor type game, that kind of like hidden by design game seems to be working for me. So I'm just going to stick with that.
Well, speaking of all-stars, this leads to my last question. Let's say you host an org and it is an all-stars version of every game you've played. And it's in any format you want. It doesn't have to be Survivor or whatever you want. Which 2 or 3 people are you going to ask for Monte Carlo to play in this game?
Gosh, if I had motivation, I've always wanted to host an org, and I've come up with ideas and I've written them out and written challenges out and did all of that. But as far as like doing it, I would need a team of people that I trusted. But who would I ask out of the cast of Monte Carlo to do that? I like messy. I like chaos. I like, all of that goodness. So it would either be Mike or Kylie. I wouldn't put them together because I've already seen that game, but definitely one of them for sure. I would love to see probably McKenna, because she's so new to it as well, and I think she's so good that I would love to see how that really develops, and then my third would be, I'm a big supporter of women and the gays, so let's pick a gay. I would go with, I would actually like to see Andrew, who, he's new, but also I think understands kind of how he was viewed and what had happened and all of that. So, and I think he could probably get up to some to some no good kind of thing. So yeah, I wonder. I mean, I would love to see a lot of these people play, and of course, I'm always going to be rooting for Victoria as well. But yeah, just some different answers to kind of give you an idea of what kind of game that I would want to host.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I like a messy game. I'm sorry I made this game so boring for everyone because it went out in the order that, I'm sorry, but I needed to win.
It was not boring for me. I feel like right when we merged, I remember like texting our production chat and being like, Jonathan is like amazing. Like every time you come to confessionals, it was like every single one of your reads was spot on. You knew exactly what was happening with every single person. And it was just so impressive to me, just watching you play.
Thank you.
I think
wow, it was masterful.
Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at Final 8, you and I like kind of said to the production team, like, Jonathan is going to win, like to our team. And everyone was like, what? And we were just like, I can't remember if like you said it or I said it, but yeah, we were like, just watch, like everything. I mean, we could just see it, like everything that you said
Okay.
Like Morgan said, this like was on the money. Like everything you brought to confessional was like I turn my camera off when I do confessional sometimes because I'm just like nodding along, like with what people are saying. Like it just, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that because I respect you both so much as hosts and as people, and Lilly as well. But you know, I definitely had Ian and Morgan along the whole way, and I was just like, I need to do right by these people, and yeah, you just really inspired me to want to do better and play better and like do right by you. So I hope that I, you know, was able to bring something a little different to this game for you.
For sure. We are very proud to have you as our winner.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, all right, we're ready for some Facebook questions. All right.
I did not prepare these like everyone else did, by the way. I did view them. I read them through once, like a couple days ago, whatever it was, and I was like, I'm just gonna wing it. So let's go for it.
Perfect. I gotta go get a drink real quick too, so I'll be back. You can start with them.
Okay. First question is from Kyle. What do you believe was the single best move you made or the move you think contributed the most to your success?
Yeah, and I feel like I've said it before, but it was 100% the lucking out at being a captain and then picking Kylie and making sure that, you know, I was in a position where it seemed like it was dire and not great, so that I would just be such a low threat level to people, especially because merge was going to come up, right? So to me, that was probably, I mean, if you want to go back farther, was really knowing that I wanted to work with Victoria immediately. Like that's probably the best decision I ever made. And then like a single event, I would say would be that swap. So
yeah, I mean, the final 13 was obviously a very tenuous time for you because if your tribe had lost, I don't really know what would have happened. You know, I wouldn't put it past you to make
Connor wouldn't have made the final 3 is what would have happened.
that does change the trajectory of even your game. And yeah. I thought about that too. Like, you know, I don't think you would have went home, but like, regardless of who went home, whether it was Connor or Will, it does change, you know, kind of like the whole final 9 is where your game started to just, you know, put itself into place. So yeah, if Connor goes, you know, who knows if you're even able to get that group of 5 at 9, whoever's even there. So yeah.
Thank God we won. Thank God I was like, Connor, you're not playing this round of, do you remember that? You like wanted to do it. I'm like, you've lost 2 points for us already. We're not doing it again.
You gotta love his comments, regardless of.
Yes. Next question is from Greg. You played a masterful game. I was shocked how no one really caught on to you and was fully entertained by your confessionals and strategic execution. How do you think you do on CBS Survivor?
Oh my God. I would make it right to the end of the first day and then I would quit. And then I would go spend the rest of the evening in my hotel. So no, it'd be terrible. You know, can I pick a different body to be in so that I don't have to take like massive amounts of medication and all that? If I could, and just transplant my mind into someone else, I think I could do fairly well. I mean, a lot of it's luck too, right? So I don't want to overlook that or claim luck as my own. But no, I need like the right temperature. I get super nauseous. I'm such a good friend of mine calls me petal because I'm a delicate flower. So I would never make it. I wouldn't even make it in the Big Brother house. Are you kidding me? I'd murder somebody. But I would do terrible.
All right. Now we know. Now I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but next question is from John Millsip. How were you able to convince Kylie and Mike to continuously trust you despite voting against them so much in the end game?
Yeah, so that really is just them thinking that I was their only option. And that's what I think I was able to convince them to do. Not that because I don't think I was their only option. I don't think you should ever think that you only have one option. Because then you're probably going to end up going home if that doesn't work out. But I position myself, we always thought like 3 or 4 rounds ahead, and just kind of all the contingencies and what we could do and how other people would, what they would want to do, what's in their best interest, really putting yourself in other people's shoes, and play around with those scenarios. So I think I just led them to believe as best I could that I was their only option by how I positioned myself in the game. So.
All right. Next question is from Margaret. Jonathan, I wish we had talked more in game, but I'm glad to know that at least we both like a good young adult, I think, murder book.
Oh, okay. Where are you going with this? Okay.
I don't know the lingo. It just says YA. So,
YA, young adult. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you had to compare your game to the crazy plot of a young adult murder book, which one would it be and why?
Compare my game. Well, here, how about let's go with One of Us is Lying, which was turned into a TV series as well. And that's not to give it away if you haven't read it, but it's someone had crafted a murder in a way that made it seem like, who knows who did it? Someone's lying. It's definitely one of us, if not more. And I feel like that's probably more comparative than anything else that I can think of. And the person was probably me. I was probably lying, and I probably murdered somebody. But so let's go with that one.
All right. I'm also now realizing that I accidentally skipped Victoria's question on Michael's exit interview. So I apologize, Victoria. It was a good question. But she has a question for you too. So thanks so much for playing this game with me. And I'm so grateful for our friendship. I'm upset that I can't even send a secret message to Morgan because I prepared these questions already. Here are my questions. 1, was there anything you decided to change about your game upon seeing this specific cast?
So I had decided, like I said, that I was going to play a little bit more kind of wild for me. Not that it was a wild game for me, but just not as cautious as I normally do. And upon seeing the cast, just that I was going to team up with Victoria and Connor, and I know that they would, coming back as returnees, they would want to, especially their placements of last year as well, they would want to do better, and they'd probably are looking for people to to join them and whatnot. So that's, upon seeing the cast, that's kind of how I went. And then the book club thing, I mean, I have hundreds of books. I'm like the slowest reader in the world, but I do love books. So when I saw that there was a few people kind of involved in that, I was like, great, let's definitely see which one is kind of, closest to kind of someone that that's the other thing I do too, is always compare someone to people in my real life and then try to speak to them the same way. That allows me to connect with them a little faster if I imagine them as someone I already know. So that's why with McKenna, it just felt very comparable to people that are friends of mine already.
All right. Second question from Victoria. Since you knew almost everything that was going on in the game, was there anything or anyone that surprised you when watching the episodes?
That sounds so cocky if I was to say I knew everything. I didn't know everything that was going on in the game, but I can't think of anything that surprised me watching the episodes. No, I mean, and it just, everything was funneled back to me through other people. So a lot of them did my dirty work for me. And, watching the game, especially by the end of it, I knew everything. I think all the major points and how everything was happening. I think that's what got me the win. So no, there wasn't anything that I was surprised about, other than, like I said, in the exit interviews, people feeling that they were closer to me than I thought. So, yeah.
Who would have thought your biggest blindside would have come from Julia?
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, who is the best duo in DCP history and why?
Okay. She wants me to say us, me and Victoria. And I do think it's me and Victoria. But the best duo is really Ian and Morgan, if you think about it.
Oh.
So, I mean, I can't beat that, but, you know, maybe me and Victoria come a close second. So
I accept the answer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I really wanted an answer from you, but I'm not gonna fault that one. I'll take it.
All right. Next question is from Alex Trias. As you know, you were consistently getting MVPs from me, and for good reason. Your gameplay was fascinating to watch from a strategic standpoint. But instead of heaping praise, I want you to answer this. What are the things in the game you wish you did better in, / were there any rounds where what you wanted to happen, where you couldn't execute what you wanted to happen?
Well, thank you, Alex, for those 3 MVP points that I have to date. I wouldn't barely have any if it wasn't for you. And then Austin as well gave me that 4th one. I watch everything, so I'm well aware, keep track. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the kind words that you say in those recaps. So thank you. To answer your question, what would I do better? Gosh, I think, and something that didn't happen. Final Tribal Council for me, like I said before, I could definitely do better. I think at the beginning of the game, I could have done better with the One World for sure. So that maybe it wouldn't have been as much of a couple round struggle for me to kind of find my footing. But I got there. So, and then did something happen that I didn't want it to happen? I would just say the Micah vote more than anything was, for me, it was like it could have been Kyle. It was just that I was trying to protect McKenna and Elijah by putting my foot down, which is not something I would normally do. And then I had said, I was letting, like, Micah, we got on a call and Micah was going to say names, and he said Kyle and Victoria. I was going to turn it around from Victoria to Kyle the next day, but then it kind of came out that it was really Micah because Mike turned it around. And I'm like, I can't be greedy. I can't protect like 3 people. So I wasn't really that connected, I thought, with Micah. So I just let it happen. I mean, I won the game, so I'm good with how it all turned out at the end of the day. I don't care.
All right. Next question is from Kylie Scruggs. Jonathan, congrats on a killer game. I loved watching you play all season, and I thought your final Tribal Council was top notch. My question for you is, how do you think your game would have been different had the game started in a normal 2-tribe format from the start?
Although I definitely found my footing in our tribe, it would have been much harder for me to connect with all of the others. Although, I think I still would have made the same connections that I made. I still would have gotten to where I've gotten to. But I just think everything would have been that much harder, I think, because there were initial talks and there were initial, conversations that were had that are really seeds for future development of these relationships in the game. So.
All right. Last question that I have is from McKenna Feeney. Jonathan, you say you played an under the radar game, and maybe to the contestants you did, but to us as production, it was like a sculptor molding his clay. Your game is something everyone on the cast can be proud of representing the season. For my question, has Victoria picked a new game to torture you with? Because I've heard all about how great you guys are at Overcooked.
Me and Victoria play some board games and we play some games, but Yeah, The Search for Planet X is what she convinced me to buy. It doesn't take me much to like convincing to buy things because I have a problem, but it's so we've played that a few times. I love board games, and yeah, was that the question? What?
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go, and thank you for saying all those nice words about my game as well. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I think she worded it very, very appropriately from our perspective watching you play all season. So,
well, that before Lilly comes back with her season question, I just want to ask them, what's your favorite board game? I guess I didn't know how much you were into.
Oh, I love games. My favorite board game is, so it depends. If it's a party game, there's a game called Pick and Choose, which is like all the best parts of like everything you can think of, like Cranium, but just simplified and all the best parts of it. And then I would say straight up board game. There's actually a game, and it's an older one, but you wouldn't know it necessarily that it was older. It's called Survive. And it's like a very different Catan, but like even simpler, but just interesting and similar to that in that same vein. So those are probably some of my favorites, but I have a whole stack in my room.
nice.
Yeah. All right, Lillian.
Yeah, as Ian mentioned, we like to end our X interviews with the same couple questions. Mine is, if you could sum up your game in one word, and we'll say it can't be winning, what would it be and why?
I know everyone prepares this, and I did not prepare this, but there's Alex called me something. And I forget the word, so it's that word. But it was like, I'm gonna not give you an answer. It's God, what's the word? I can't think of it. This is what happens when you don't prepare. It was like basically like, you know, a very like deceitful kind of. Sure, let's just say you want me to pick a word. I'll go with.
It can be hyphenated or like multiple.
Yeah,
with that caveat. Yeah.
I mean, it's like God, I should have written down that word that Alex said about me. It's that word. That's my answer. But it's like it's very secretive. Sure. But like a deceptive, seedy. No, just secretive's fine.
A good one.
All righty, and then I'm really interested to hear your answer for my question, because you know the past 4 people have said you, so you can't answer yourself. Who on the Monte Carlo cast impressed you the most throughout the entire season, and why?
Okay, so for me, if I'm impressed by someone, it's because I've underestimated them, and I try not to underestimate anyone. But to give you an answer, I would say that I was most impressed by, you know what I'm going to say. It's Victoria. It's you know, I was really impressed with McKenna as well. And there's definitely a bunch that really surprised me and were really consistent in that. I mean, and I could literally give you my own awards for everyone of what I loved about them. But yeah, I thought highly of Victoria going into this, and she just blew me away with all of that and more, as far as how dynamic her thinking is, and how genuine she is, and how well she can play the game. So I was definitely, yeah, that would be my answer, Victoria, for sure.
That's kind of what I was expecting, was one of those two. But yeah, it's I'm sure they'll be delighted to hear that from you as well. So all righty. Well, Morgan, Lilly, Jonathan, anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off?
Just thank you again. I had a lot of fun, and I will miss seeing all of your faces, but I will watch all future DCP as I have watched all the past. So yeah, and it was great, and I really appreciate it, and I can't express that enough. So thank you so much. I'm super grateful for this whole experience. And until next season, really, see what happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, until next season is true, because this is the last time that Morgan, Lilly, and I will be on screen for an exit, and this is the last time Morgan and I will be on screen for quite some time. So, yeah, not only to Jonathan, but to all the viewers, all the other castaways, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching, for playing, for asking questions, for participating in fantasy, whatever you did to support or appreciate Survivor Monte Carlo. It means a lot to me. Put a lot of time into this, and even if there weren't episodes, like, just the whole adventure of hosting is something that I've thought I would love, and then I love actually doing 10 times more than I thought I would before it started. So yeah, I can't express my gratitude enough to everyone involved. So yeah, and Jonathan, you played an incredible game. I think we've all stumbled tonight at least once trying to find a word to describe how you played. Yeah, I just can't explain how good it was enough. And if anything ever happened in the future with you coming back, I don't want to put a target on your back, but it was amazing. So
thank you.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for exit interviews for Survivor Monte Carlo. We have one last recap with Alex Trias and his two guests. And then we have one last fantasy draft update where you get to see who between John, Zucker, and Andrew win, because I'm not even going to mention Simmons and his team. So yeah, we'll see who came out on top for fantasy. And then we will have an announcement for who won the Eliminator fantasy game also coming up. So that person will win a Survivor 42 buff of their choice. So lots of exciting stuff. And then we have Survivor mini season 5 Trinity Falls airing next. That'll be the next season we have airing. So another fun DCP journey for all to enjoy. And yeah, for the last time, good night, and thanks for following all season.